Hi. Hey. I hit a new setting on this thing, just so you know, where it automatically starts recording. So it's recording and it already did the test and it's like, hey, you're good. So, unfortunately, the setting that I changed caused our audio tracks to overlap throughout this entire recording. I am so sorry about that and wish that me and Laura had more time to go back and record again, but we do not. So I am going to do my best with the editing on this one. Here goes nothing. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to BipolarLines, the podcast where two spouses talk about navigating life, loving someone with bipolar disorder. I'm Brooke.
And I'm Laura. And
we are going to talk about psychosis and maybe the aspects, some spiritual journey aspects that Laura can speak to that she has found herself in along the way. Good episode topic.
Yes. That's a heavy topic, but it was requested in our Facebook group, BipolarLines Pod. And yeah, people just wanted to hear more about it. So I do feel like we've gotten into mania, but we haven't really gotten into psychosis. So has Jeremy ever experienced any psychosis? Okay, he has.
Indeed. For all the listeners, spouses, partners, loved ones, I'm just going to tell you my perspective. The beginning of psychosis in someone else is thoroughly confusing. In fact, it feels shocking. And you kind of want to dismiss it. Like, you're kind of like, I know for all those people not watching the video, my face is like, are you kidding me right now? Like, you're kind of like, what is this person talking about? And what is happening? And it's very confusing. So we'll dive into the details, and Laura can speak to, she's experienced more with Cody than I have with my husband. But I just want to point that out, that like, if just now experienced your first episode of psychosis with your person, like, give yourself some grace, please.
You know, I think that the most misunderstood about psychosis is just from the word psychosis itself, because that word psycho, people, psychosis, psycho, American Psycho, psychotic, serial killers. I feel like that's where people's minds go if they don't actually recognize psychosis as a medical condition, which it is. And it does affect people in many different disabilities, not just bipolar disorder.
Psychosis refers to a collection of symptoms that affect the mind, causing a disconnect from reality. The person's thoughts and perceptions are disrupted, causing behavioral changes that can worsen over time without medical intervention.
I remember one time when the receptionist at my work was like, oh my God, is he like going to come in here and just be crazy? I'm like, no, he's going to come in here and you're not going to think anything's wrong with him. Like, he's going to act completely fine. It's only me that knows the stuff he's saying, that people are following him, or, you know, things like that. He's not going to come in and be like, blah, I'm psycho. Like, and that's what people think.
Now, there can be situations where your person is acting out during psychosis, right? Like, I don't want to minimize it to say that it could never happen.
Yes, that's
here's
true.
A real quick example. During I think it was the later half of my husband's first full-blown episode of psychosis, he finally met me at a restaurant here locally to us, and I got out of the car. I could see that he was in the parking lot, and it took 20 minutes, Laura, to get into the restaurant. He did loops around the entire parking lot, looking at every single vehicle, like looking in the vehicle to see if there's anybody in there. I'm like, okay, we got this. It's fine. We're going inside. We get inside, and he does the same thing. He walks around the entire restaurant just as slow as can be, looking at every person, just scanning for the people who are following him to see if they were in there.
Yes, definitely. I did not mean to minimize it either. So there is that, absolutely. And I definitely had my fair share of people recognizing something is wrong with him. That's usually end stage, like about to hit the hospital. So yes, like, I think the one story that came to mind when you said that was Cody thought someone was trying to kill us, literally, both of us. And, you know, I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, they're gaslighting me. But especially in psychosis, I'm like, is it gaslighting when they actually believe what they're thinking? Like, no, it's not. Like, And if you're in a state where you literally think someone is following you, trying to kill you, he had anxiety up the wazoo, and he was extremely explosive and angry, and rightly
Absolutely.
so. Like, if you really thought someone was going to kill you and your person is just like, "Hey, let's calm down, let's talk," you're gonna be like,
It's gonna make
"God,
it
God,"
worse.
like,
Yeah.
you are not. And so, this was one of these
Mm-hmm.
instances, and, oh my God, it was like the perfect storm of him going into his office telling him, "I think you need to take a mental health day," him leaving his office, something happened with his
Oh,
car. I can't remember if it like ran out of gas or he didn't have his key. So then he was walking down a major road, and he calls me and is like, "Come and pick me up." And so I try to come and pick him up, but there's an accident. And he's like, "See, that's like sabotage. Like they're personally trying to sabotage it so you can't get to
mm.
me." And I'm like, "It's just an accident. I'm going to be there as soon as I can." And he just kept calling, like, "Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you?" I finally find him, and he's walking through a parking lot. He's holding one of his guitars for some reason. He's sweating. He looks like he's in an anxiety, panic attack mode. And he gets in the car and then has me drive back to his work. And we have to go upstairs and go in front of all the security cameras. So there's a timestamp of where we are. And then he agreed to let me take him to the hospital. And in the hospital, I think they thought I was a victim of domestic abuse because he was like being protective of me and he wouldn't let anyone around me because he literally thought someone was going to kill me. So, I mean,
That's a lot. Yeah. I
it's a lot.
touch on two things you just said. Number one, being in the hospital and the staff thought you were potentially a victim of domestic abuse. I think that is so real and not something that you consider until you're in that moment, right? Because we're concerned about our person. We're just trying to keep them safe, get them help. Like it can just happen. The way that they become so protective of their people, it's real to them, and we can come across as like as
Mm-hmm.
victims of assault, abuse, what have you. So that's a really really good
Mm-hmm.
point to bring up, and I hate that, but also like I want to be like no. But also like everybody who's probably in that situation, they see it at hospitals more so than not, right? Like that's probably the typical response is to be like,
Right.
no, what are you talking about?
Right. That probably is a thing. Mhm. Yeah, it threw me for a loop. I remember them wanting to pull me aside away from him, and he was not having
Right.
it because he was worried, in his psychosis. And I was like, "How about you just let him have line of sight? Like he thinks someone's
Yeah.
gonna kill me. Just let him have line of sight." So he says yes. So we're in line of sight, and then in their questioning, like I'm thinking they're gonna be asking me about him, but instead they were asking me about me. Like, "Are you okay? Do you feel threatened?" And I was like, "Wait, what? Like,
Hold
that's
on.
not why I'm here.
Yeah.
I need you to help this
I'm
man."
fine. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
jarring, but also I feel like our jarred response is very off-putting to the professionals that are concerned. And you're like, it's just not
Yeah.
it doesn't go as comfortably or as smoothly as like you'd hope, but just know there's a possibility that can happen. And maybe now that you know that, you're like, oh, I remember they mentioned this. Like, just know it can happen and be like, no, 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 I'm totally fine. I know that's how you feel. Maybe that's what you're sensing, but like, this is happening because da 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 da, right? Like, I think if you talk from a place of observations and history with your person, that can help nip that real quick. But if you're just like, no, no, what are you talking about? No, that's not going to go well. They're going to keep asking. So,
Mhm.
squirrel
Yeah.
moment. But yes, great
Right.
point.
Conversely, it hasn't always been that serious. Like his very first, I mean, they're all
Sure.
serious, but I mean to that level. His first psychosis was that he grew up Mormon and I grew up Catholic, and this is the confusing part. When you talk about being confused, he comes to me one day and he tells me that the Holy Spirit has been talking to him, and it's all going to be okay. Don't worry about it. But him and I are going to lead the Mormon church. Like, this is a person that I've been married. I've known him for how long at this point? 7 years. We dated 3.5. Oh no, maybe 4 years, like 4 or 5
Sure.
years.
Sure.
Either
Long
way, a
enough to know.
long time. Like I didn't want to dismiss what he was saying. We had no idea he was bipolar. This was his first episode. And so it was really confusing because I'm like, what is he talking about? Like, he doesn't even want to be Mormon. I didn't want to be Catholic.
Right.
That's
Right.
how we got along. We both were like, organized
Right.
religion, not having it. And that's
Right.
just how we got along. I'm not saying if you're in an organized religion, it's bad or
Sure.
whatever. I'm saying that's how we connected. So the fact that he was like, we're going to leave the Mormon church, I'm like,
Yeah.
what do I do with this? And then the like persecutory delusion started coming along where he thought people were watching us. So that, and then I was like, is this for real? Like, you know, him like looking out the windows, and you don't want to just dismiss it because it seems disrespectful.
This type of delusion is called mood congruent, which just means it occurs when the person is in a manic or depressive state. I don't think there's one specific way for anyone to handle psychosis in their person because everybody's different, right? Like, I do think that and you can tell me your opinion if you agree or not, but like, I do think the universal approach is to not try to tell them that they're not seeing what they're seeing or they're not hearing what they're hearing. Like, don't try to correct that person because you don't agree with what they're seeing or hearing. Like, obviously you can't hear what they're hearing in their head, but like, for example, if they're like, oh my God, there's rats everywhere, but you look around and you don't see rats. To say, no, there's no rats. They believe it. They see it. It is as real to them as this cup is that I'm drinking out of, right? Like, it is that real. So to tell them that it's not real is really going to be upsetting and triggering because then they start to, I think, try to convince you that it is real. And then I think it just gets even worse and worse and worse. So I think universally we can say, don't try to change their perspective because it is their perspective. That's what they're seeing. That's what they're feeling. That's what they're hearing. We can't change that. I think how you deal with it is different.
I think that is the prevailing recommendation as well. Same with like dementia, other disorders like that. Like there's no purpose in trying to convince them that the reality in which they are currently experiencing is false. That would be the same as me telling you right now, Brooke, you're not looking at me and you're not doing this podcast recording. You're going to be like, but I am.
Like, in this, I am. Yeah. And so then you just try to justify that what you're seeing is real. Like don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. It's really going to go nowhere. But so then what do you do? I mean, because sometimes it seems like I don't know.
You want to validate the feeling, not the action or inaction tied to it, right? So like, oh, wow, that must be really scary to be seeing rats right now. I'm acknowledging what he's seeing is scary. Or maybe I ask questions like, oh, wow, did they just show up? Like, I don't want to further this delusion or this hallucination, but I want to understand where my husband is in the moment. Like, no, I've been seeing him for 2 days. I just haven't said anything. That tells me, oh, okay, we are a little further down the road than maybe I thought we were, right? So I could ask questions to understand, but if those questions are triggering for him, I'm shutting it down. I'm not going to ask anymore. I'm just going to validate his experience, not the action or inactions tied to it. And just a reminder, validating somebody doesn't mean you agree with them. You validate by acknowledging that what they're feeling and saying about how they're feeling is real, that it may be hard, that it's frustrating, or what have you. It doesn't mean like, yeah, I agree that you're mad. You have every right to be mad, or I'm totally on board with you seeing rats. Everybody should see rats. That's not it, right? You just have to, it's just to try to like show empathy, understanding, right, for the person.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's so confusing. Jeremy, has he been committed like in a psych ward?
The one time he started feeling and traveling into psychosis, he was at a residential treatment facility and they let him go. So that's fun. That's fun.
Oh my goodness.
Of course they did.
Of course they did. I just remember it being like if nothing I've ever experienced in my life going to visit him because it's open floor, so everybody is out. They're not like, hospitals. I'm used to people having their own private room with the doors shut. That is not how a psych ward works. It's open doors and everyone's kind of out in the community and everyone's experiencing certain things. So it's just, and a lot of them are in psychosis. A lot of them are angry. There's a lot of outbursts. I remember this one time though, there's always someone who thinks they're Jesus. I don't know why. Cody's never had that particular psychosis, but it's so common for people to believe. I mean, he did, I guess, in a sense, saying we're going to lead the Mormon church, but he didn't think he was Jesus, or that wasn't it. But I remember this one guy just being really happy, like doing ballet. Like we were sitting together in the main room and he was doing ballet. He's like a 300-pound man doing ballet around us. He was very happy. And, I'm trying to convince Cody. Cody's like, I just want out of here. And I'm like, honey, I know you do, but like, you have to get a little bit better first. And he sees this guy go around us and he's like, that's not making me better.
I can totally understand that, because all you can do, I mean, they are happy. They are in their, nobody can touch them. He is doing ballet. Like, but I can imagine being there like, okay, how do you go?
Yeah.
You're not doing ballet, but like, you're still not at baseline. Like, that'd be really hard to try to convince him. Ooh, yeah. I never got to visit Jeremy when he was in the psych ward. That's not allowed here. Yeah, no, zero visitation. There was one facility where we could have had a visitation night, but it was by phone, so we couldn't see him in person. And they're not allowed to have their phones.
Wow.
Nothing.
Oh.
Literally behind the doors.
Wow.
Cannot talk to him unless he calls, and it's on their phone. Yeah. So I haven't experienced that.
Yeah, no phones here, no cell phones here either, but it depends on which facility is how much you're allowed to visit. So there was the one hospital placement I could go 2 times a day, every day. And it was certain times. You couldn't just drop in. It was certain times that you got visited. And I remember that one in particular, Cody, you can bring them stuff that is approved by the staff. So like he wanted Gatorade, or he wanted, a certain snack or whatever. And I remember this one time he got mad at me, like in a fight, like he's, sick. And so I started to leave, and his roommate was like, don't let her leave. He's like, no one gets visits here, man. Like, don't screw that up. And I like just felt so sad for him. And then when Cody got out, he said that guy never got visited once, never got called once.
That hurts. That's awful.
That was heartbreaking.
Yeah, we could talk to him, but we couldn't visit. Yeah, no kids.
Kids aren't allowed, for sure. Kids aren't allowed to go.
That's the rule. But yeah, no, we definitely couldn't do that. And that was one facility. Now the residential facility, they did involve, family therapy, where we would have one-on-one sessions with his therapist and that kind of thing. Or they'd have family night where we could go, and the kids were able to go at that point because this was residential. So Zoe was over 12. So she was able to go, and it was good. It was good to just hang out. They cooked dinner, like we got to eat dinner with him, that kind of thing. But there was one individual who apparently her thing, whatever you want to call it for this episode, was to get naked and run around the facility and steal people's clothes. Go into their rooms and steal people's clothes.
Oh, heavens.
And she would come out in whatever clothes she stole, right, and put on, and she would just be hee-haw laughing down the halls. It wasn't a wicked laugh. It was just, it was like a little kid laugh. Like, it was just hysterical. She was having the time of her life, and then she would do it again, and the staff would be like, "Come back here," whatever, and you're just like, okay, well, that's interesting. And Jeremy goes, "Joanna, you better not steal my clothes, damn it!" I was like, what is happening? So, but then, there are some that are angry who, they can be violent, and that's also scary. I think to tie it back to like, what do you do when the person is in psychosis? I think you have to, again, not invalidate their experience or try to convince them otherwise, but like, also just recognize that when they are in this altered state, they are super, super sensitive to anybody's response and reaction. I feel like Jeremy was looking for me to like patronize him. So you can't just be like, oh, honey, it's going to be okay. And as that delusion and the hallucinations got worse, his hypersensitivity to me lessened. But it's like a process. It's a cycle. It started off with a lot of confusion. It's very confusing for them, I think, when they initially start down the road of psychosis. Like, one second I'm fine, and the next second I'm hearing voices, and I'm like, who's got the radio on? And which has happened to us. He's like, would you turn down the music? And we're like, we're not playing music.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, no, there's no music on. And he's like, oh, okay. All right. It's probably my phone. And, they try to like cover it up because that's embarrassing. But then that's that recognition of like, no, I'm hearing music. What is happening? So that's scary for them too. That would be scary for me. And that is what you call an audible hallucination, hearing something that others cannot. My husband has at 3:00 in the morning, like, flew out of bed. Brooke, what are you doing? And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And he was like, get up. Zoe's crying. Zoe's screaming. And I'm like, huh? And so he takes off running up the stairs, and I hear nothing, Laura. There's no screaming. Zoe's fine.
Oh, man.
And he gets up there, and he's like, Zoe, and she's, of course, like, whatever. And he comes back downstairs, and I'm like, oh, crap. Oh, crap. The oh, crap is because, like, he was faced with a 9-year-old at the time, maybe 8, who was like, what are you talking about? I'm fine.
Yeah.
I wasn't crying, Dad. Yeah. Like, she's convincing him she's fine, and he's convinced she's not. And I couldn't really intervene there because that's a hard spot to be in, because Zoe's would be looking at me like, Mom, what's Dad's problem? And then Jeremy's looking to me for reassurance that like he's doing the right thing. So I just had to kind of let that play out. But he came back downstairs and he was like, you heard that. You heard her screaming. I'm like, no, babe, I'm sorry. I didn't. And the reason I did this is because nothing else was happening. He wasn't showing any other psychosis.
Yeah, in that situation, well, he asked you point blank too. So that's different. You were honest because he asked you point blank. So that would be different as opposed to him being combative, being like, you heard it. You did. He didn't present it to you that way. So that opened the door for you to be honest. So I think that's a little different. I will say though, and I'm wondering if this is the case with you, from my understanding, to have bipolar 1 with psychotic features and not be schizoaffective, one of the defining characteristics is that you become psychosis in mania. But I know you can get psychosis and depression, but I feel like for Cody, that's why they said it's bipolar and not schizoaffective. Like, for example, he wouldn't just experience psychosis unless he was manic. He only experiences psychosis in mania.
That's my understanding as well. Jeremy's never had any sort of psychosis tied to depression. It's always been mania. Yeah.
Okay.
A little side research for you. According to the DSM-5, the criteria for a schizoaffective disorder diagnosis occurs when a person has experienced both schizophrenic symptoms and mood symptoms, like a mania episode, for a significant period of time.
Yeah. And then Cody doesn't have really depressive episodes. So, but so my point though, in that, I talk about this term all the time just because I wish I had known of it when I first was going through this with him, but this anosognosia or anosognosia or whatever it is, but it's essentially this condition that develops in severe mental illness where the person doesn't realize that they're sick. So it is interesting because there are very much times that Cody doesn't realize he's manic, but he might have those periods of lucidity where he does what, maybe this isn't true. Like with the psychosis, like you were just saying with Jeremy, that's a period of lucidity where he was like, you didn't hear it? And sometimes you do see that. Do you ever see that? Those moments of lucidity in them? Which is also very confusing because then you're like, oh, well, there they are. Now they understand this is all,
And then before you know it,
it all flips back.
Oh, okay. Just kidding. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I don't know how. I wish we could see, I wish the inner workings of the brain could talk, frankly, where we could see it
I
happening,
know.
because you have them for that 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know how long it is. It's usually not very, very long, but I think maybe, as I say that out loud, I'm like, I think maybe that lucidity period ends when there's a trigger for something else, whether that's an ask, a question, a feeling, an interruption. Because if I think back to, for my situation, like, yeah, something has happened that has caused a response in him, and then I've lost him again.
Yeah. That's true. And because the frontal lobe is so impaired at that point, the sustained attention is not something that happens for anything, whether it's lucidity or not lucidity or whatever they're doing, whatever he's doing, it's not, it switches on a dime. Do you know the other interesting thing that I've never talked about? I don't think even on my, I mean, maybe I've alluded to it, but it is, so there's, like, Cody always needs a hospitalization to get out of psychosis. It's never been he got out of it without one. And so that's usually what lands him in the hospital, is having that severe psychosis episode. Something happens. Now he's in a hospital. And we'll be going along and he'll be calm. There are lots more periods of lucidity when I visit him in the hospital. Lots more. But then there'll be those little things where you're like, oh, no, he's still in it. And then it'll be like one day I'll go in there and it is like a switch flipped and he suddenly realizes that he had an episode and now he's done. Like it literally, Brooke. It's never been this like gradual coming out of it. It's like I go in one day and he's still talking about I don't know, what? You know, something that's delusional. And then I go in the next day. I remember like the last one that he had, when I went to visit him, he was like, Laura, I didn't realize how sick I was. I'm thinking, you really just destroyed our whole lives. But wow, okay. And then like I'm like, oh, tell me more about that. And he was just completely out of the episode, everything done. Probably still a little manic, hypomanic, but that psychosis was just gone. And he recognized it was all fake. It wasn't real. It was all a delusion. That it's crazy. Have you ever experienced that?
When he was getting followed and all that, he wouldn't go to the hospital, like an ER. But he had just been able to sign himself out AMA with a residential facility, right? He was walking around Atlanta, Georgia without an ID, without medication, without anything, but his clothes that he put underneath his car, because that's where they told him to put them. They did not. Anyway, got picked up by the cops because he was going to stay at a hotel room and he had his card number on a piece of paper. They wouldn't give him his card, but here's your card number on a piece of paper. I don't know. It was a whole weird situation. Anyway, I get a call from the police at 2 a.m, like, hey, so your husband is trying to drink and get food and he didn't know that they wouldn't bill it to the room. Like, can you call it and pay for it? I was so pissed, Laura. I was so pissed at this man because he had just signed himself out AMA. He didn't have his phone either, by the way. He had nothing. My gut, I was like, no, F him. I don't want to deal with this shit. Like, no. But I was like, wait, he's in downtown Atlanta and out of his mind. Like he could get killed. Like he could approach the wrong people. He could get, okay, yeah, fine, here. I'll call, I'll pay for it, blah, blah, blah. So I did. Anyway, then he was able to get his stuff the next day and able to drive home. At this point, I didn't realize he was in psychosis. I just thought he was still manic. Not great, but at least still mostly somewhat kind of with it. That's hard to explain, right? Because like psychosis just adds another element. Mania is mania, but it's still not great. Anyway, so he came home and it lingered for 2-3 weeks. Whew. He wouldn't stay at, no, wasn't that long.
Say, oh God.
He wouldn't stay at home. He went to a hotel. He's paying for cash, and he was talking in third person. I actually recorded it because I was like, I don't know how to explain this to anybody unless they hear it. So I recorded it.
Right.
And we went to this step down facility locally to us. And luckily the guy that was doing the intake evaluation let me stay in the room. I think he just picked up on Jeremy's vibe because he wasn't doing anything outlandish, but he was constantly looking out the window, and you go from one room to the next, and usually the next room, like, it would just be him. And I was like, if I don't get a chance to tell this guy what is actually happening, like, he needs help, but he won't go to get the help he needs. So anyway, the doctor was just kind of like, yeah, okay, well, let's go into this room and we're going to do something with headphones. I can't remember what it was, but so he put the headphones on him, and he was listening to music and had to answer some questionnaire survey. And he was like, what's happening? And I was like, oh, thank God. And he was like, I noticed he's paranoid. He's clearly looking out the window a lot. And usually that's an indication of some element of psychosis, yada, yada, yada. And I could tell he was lying because I asked him certain questions, and the way Jeremy did it was like, he would try to speak before I spoke, and he would put his body in front of mine as if, like, don't listen to her. So anyway, he finally got help. That psychiatrist said, yeah, he's not willing to go to a hospital, but what I can do is call his psychiatrist, his normal psychiatrist, and get him to call in a prescription for, different antipsychotic, yada, yada, yada. We'll do that. He was like, but I'm going to give it to him here in the office. So I had some intervention in that moment. And then it just quit. Gone.
Wow.
And I'm
like, it's crazy.
What?
Yeah.
And it does make you wonder, like, how?
Yeah, that's exactly how it is.
How did you just, like, Dr. What did he call it? Dr. I can't believe I'm forgetting this. Jabroni, something like that. And there is a Dr. Jabroni. He does exist, but in Vegas, just so you know. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, man, I wish antipsychotics like worked that well on Cody. The reason he needs the hospitalization is because he usually, I feel like, I think if it's not every time, it's almost every time he gets something called the booty juice. What that is, Brooke, I don't know. It's obviously some syringe. I think it's Haldol. And that just floors him. Like, he essentially has to be tranquilized. And then once he's tranquilized, he's not better yet. He'll still sleep, come out of it. And then, he'll stay, like, the way his works, it's usually very, very pattern specific once he's in the hospital and staying there now. Involuntarily committed, like 72-hour hold, and then you get put on a mental health hold. Then it'll be like 5 to 7 days of still being psychotic. And then boom, that switch hits. And then, after that, we have him back, then 3 more days approximately, and they release him.
That's craziness.
Yeah. No, I know. It really is like people just really don't understand. I love that. I love our Facebook group for that, because you just like explaining all of this to someone before then you even just set up your initial problem why you need to talk to someone is just, it feels like it's not even worth it. Like, you know what? You just really don't understand. Forget it.
The idea of communicating that is exhausting. So I'm like, meh.
Yeah.
Forget it. Yeah.
Yeah, because people will not understand.
I think there's a fine line, too, of, like, everybody's situation is going to be different. Like, if your person is going through psychosis right now that's tied to mania, that's been our experience, okay? So I can't speak to psychosis that's outside of a manic episode. Can't.
Yeah.
But, and let's just say your person is still semi-functioning, okay? They're showing up, they're doing things. My experience with that is very, very, very simple. This is how I've managed it. At some point, that function stops. At some point, that illness wants something more than what it currently has. And your children become in danger. It's not intentional. It's not
Mm-hmm.
intentional, but it is way too risky, in my opinion, to allow that person to be responsible for anyone, much less themselves at that point, because
Yes.
they could be driving, and if they're
Yes.
seeing things, it's not safe for them to drive. I'm seeing rats.
Yes.
Great, let's go take a trip to the grocery store. No, let's not. Like, let's not do that. Or let me drive, right? So I know that can be difficult.
I agree. That's a good point to bring up, Brooke. I always leave. There's always a point where I take the kids and leave. So we either stay with my mom in a hotel, or even I've gone to his parents' house before, where, and not even that I've, I don't feel like he would hurt them, but just like you said, inadvertently, one of the episodes, he left the oven burner on. He cooked himself breakfast at 2 a.m. because he's up acting crazy, and I wake up to an oven burner on. How long it had been on, I do not know. I mean, obviously that whole night. Yeah. And so it'll be things like that. Or I call it the witching hour, because he can almost, when they call in dementia, they talk about sundowning, if you're ever familiar with that word. I swear that is what happens is as the night starts to come, that's when he starts acting wilder and wilder. So during the day, a lot of times he can look pretty functional. Like I said, he can come to my office. No one would know what's going on. But then at night, he's up all night. He's cooking himself food at 2 a.m. He's taking 3 to 4 showers because his skin is crawling, or he's, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know if he knows why. Or this one time, he, thought we had a digital thermostat that we just bought. It was very expensive. It was $70 for this new HVAC system we got. And he thought it was spying on him. So he punched it, and there was blood all over. And I was like, my kids can't be exposed to this.
Yeah, gotta get out of there.
I have to protect. They can't be exposed.
And that's hard to do. It's okay, I'm going to leave him here, and he's still not, fully able to take care of himself. But at the same time, my kids don't need to be exposed to this. Yeah. And he's still semi-functioning if he won't go to the hospital or whatever. You know.
Yeah. And he never wants to go to the hospital.
So just know that typically with psychosis, that things will advance. And it's not because, like you just said, I don't think Cody would ever hurt your kids. It's never going to be intentional for our people. My husband would never want to hurt our kids. But it's those inadvertent, those things that just happen where the illness takes over, where they have to do something right there in this moment and nothing else matters. That's when things can go a little sideways. So just be mindful of that. Choose the best of a bad situation, and that sucks. But so leaving is what you have to do. I've had to leave with the kids too, and I've had to take away his keys. I've had to call the police. I've had to do all the things that I could possibly think of. You got to do what you got to do. Just don't assume that just because they're semi-functioning that they're fully functional. They're not. They're just not.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
no.
Let's see. Anything else about psychosis? Oh, kind of like what we mentioned with depression. If you have an ROI on file with your person's psychiatrist, doctor team, care team, call them immediately when it starts. That way they're aware, they're in the loop, and you can try medication management if you haven't been down this road before. Unlike Laura's situation, it doesn't really work for Cody, but call, let them know, let them be aware. Because some things during psychosis, like mania, things can explode real quick, real fast. Jeremy's tried to give his therapist the boot, all kinds of things. So just make them aware. I think that's also important. And have that conversation with your kids that's age appropriate at the same time. Yes, daddy's sick right now. He's not feeling well, and things look a little bit different than maybe what you've seen before. If you're, have that conversation just so they don't take it personally or internalize it and think that they've done something wrong. Because I guarantee you that your person's going to pop off and say something to the child, no matter what and how it's phrased.
Yep, I totally agree with that. You and I are always been on the same page about telling our kids. I was scrolling TikTok the other night and ran across this content creator who is a woman who has bipolar herself. And she was saying, like, thanks everyone for checking in on me. She's like, I'm doing good. She's like, it's been hard to get on here and talk because the kids have been on spring break. And as you all know, we don't tell them about my bipolar. I know. And I was gonna comment like, why don't you? But then I
Right.
don't know what
You're
mood
like,
state she's
well,
in either, So I was like, it's likely not, yeah, it's likely not to go anywhere. But
no.
I would never recommend that. I would never, because like Brooke said, no, kids, and I work with kids, and they internalize everything. They view everything as they did something wrong, and it's not even me working with kids. We know this from the divorce literature. We know this from
Yep.
so many sources that if you are not open and honest with your kids, they put that all
Absolutely.
on their shoulders.
And that doesn't stop at age. Let me be clear. I am a daughter, and if my parents were going through some stuff, it's going to be worse for me at almost 40 years old because I'm more aware, more in tune, more knowledgeable, have more life experiences, right? So like, don't not tell your kids at 16, 17, 18 years old because like they don't need to know they have their own life. No, tell them. They need to know. They need to know at some level of understanding when they reach that point of understanding, like they need to know on their level how they can understand it, what's happening. Because yeah, they fill in the gaps every time. They will fill in the gaps and make it, then take the fault, take the blame. So yeah, same conversation there. At least for us, that's how it works best for us. I think that is what's best. All right, maybe we'd switch gears now and talk about this spiritual conversation.
Yeah, so someone had mentioned in that same thread, she wanted us to talk about psychosis, but also what I mean when I say I've been on a spiritual journey, because it is a loaded, that's a loaded two words that are not easily explained in
Sure.
just, a thread. But basically, what I found through going through all of this, like, because I'm always the type of person that's like, I ask, like, what is the lesson I'm supposed to be learning from this? And I remember people being like, honey, stop focusing on lessons you need to learn and just survive. And I'm like, fair, because I'm in crisis. But like something is happening that I know can make me better. And so mostly like the first round was just kind of a fluke because then he had 10 years in remission. So it was kind of like, whew,
Right.
good thing that thing is over. And then we started our family and bought a house and like had 10 years of all of that. But then in the last now 10 years, again, 10-ish years, he had gone through like 8. I mean, the journey for me really was like, I always ask myself that question, but it always brought me to a better place, which sounds crazy to say because it's hell on earth. Like if I could describe going through manic psychotic episodes every single time, it's absolute
Sure.
hell. I don't wish it on anyone. But at the same time, like the one of them, I worked in the schools and I was responsible. I am on a team of people and it's very hard to schedule certain meetings that we have to do. And when he was sick, and this happened once was in August and one was in May of the 2 different school years, but still, I wasn't there for my team. Like he wasn't responsible. He wasn't able to take my kids. He wasn't able to pick them up. Like I had to keep calling into work and it just wasn't working. Like it wasn't working. And like at the same time, I got this opportunity to do kind of my own, like start my own business. And I don't think I would have ever taken that leap. I'm not that type of person. I don't know. I'm just not. But I don't think I ever would have taken that leap had I not been forced to it. Because it became very clear that I could not operate on a 9 to 5 schedule and have people responsible for me in that sense that like I couldn't cancel. And so now I have a situation where I still have people responsible for me, but I'm open and honest with all of them and they're my private clients and I can rearrange, I can reschedule, I can cancel and they understand why. And it's been amazing. So I mean, that would have never happened had it not been for these episodes. Or there was this one time we were not in a great place financially. And I just remember, and again, I did grow up Catholic, so I have a lot of that background. I just don't agree in the organized religion of it. And then personally, I believe in like a universal aspect of it. And I think we're all channeling it and just calling it different things. So, I mean, if it's church for you and that's what does it, and just putting everything in Jesus, that's great. If if it's a universal type source, I think that's great too. Like, and so that's pretty much how I looked at it. But I remember, so this one time just being like, I'm not going to make it. Like, I can't do this. Like, he doesn't have his job. We have this payment, this payment, this payment, this payment. And during that, I was like, I just let it go. Someone else has to figure this out for me because I can't do it. And so it was like in this surrender. And in that surrender, that same week I had, parents do like a meal chain for me.
That's awesome.
Which was amazing. Like, it makes me cry. I can even think of the picture. And then my daughter has special needs, and so she's got a ton of staff that works with her. And the whole staff at my daughter's school pulled together gift cards that they had from Domino's or Chick-fil-A or free coupons. And like, it was a full card full of that. And then his aunt, Cody's aunt, for some reason, I don't know, put $1,000 check in the mail. And I was like, holy cow. Like, I am totally taken care of no matter what happens. So again, just that's like a spiritual journey aspect of it, right? Like, and I don't think I would have learned to surrender or trust like that had I not been forced into this extreme situation like I was. So there's just so many more like that. I could go on and on and on and on. But
that's awesome though that worked out that way for sure. And I think I'm with you, Laura, in that, like, I'm not a fan of organized religion either. We're probably going to get comments about that. That's fine. But I don't judge anyone else. I support whatever line you want to take in your spiritual journey, your faith. I'm fully supportive as long as it's not hurting other people directly, right? Like, you do you. Totally on board with that. I've just experienced weaponized religion towards mental health.
Yes. Yeah. Oh gosh, we both have. We get those comments all the time.
So I have to be very mindful of how that works and the impact that has. My husband grew up Christian. So like, he was on church on Wednesdays and Sundays. So he has a very distinct distaste for organized religion too, right? Well, he has been. Seems like he's being more curious about religion these days, or at least just a higher power. Anyway, point is, like, your spiritual journey is yours and anyone else's is theirs, right? So like, you, for those things to happen in the way that they did, it's refreshing, and it's part of what helped you get through it, part of like, oh my gosh, I am going to make it, right? Like, how people come together and how things happen. And very similar for me with Jeremy's attempt in 2023. He was in the hospital for a long time. Recovery was a long time. I mean, my work, they donated time for one. So I had 0 PTO time left. They donated over 130 hours of PTO time. Yeah.
Wow.
And they also collected money, and they sent me or sent us two gift cards for a little over $1,000. Yeah, it was amazing. And that was just my work. We had the TikTok community. They were sending cards for Zoe's birthday because it was right before her birthday, and that was really cool. So that's so cool. I guess that's my point. Like, how everything comes together and works out it's always amazing to talk about and see. And I think it's also something that we can lean on in those bad times, in those harder times. We can come together with these these stories that aren't so, I don't want to say doom and gloom, but aren't so like happy, you know?
Yeah. You know, I was thinking the other day, Brooke, and I don't know if this is true, but I was thinking about, like, there was someone that commented on my TikTok, and he was bipolar, and he was like, I think it takes a strong person to be with someone like myself, just saying.
Sure.
And no shade. And I was like, you know, there's like different personality types. I feel like there's other people it affects worse than me. And so I'm like, if I am able to take these experiences that I've gone through with Cody and still be here. And same with you, you're still here. And it's okay if you're not, like, if your system can't handle it, I
no
totally get it.
judgment, no
We're not
shame.
here to be like, stay no matter what and be like us. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if I'm able to do it, and then, yeah, like I've used this term before, I definitely believe in turning that pain into some sort of purpose. If we can then use it to help other people and say, hey, this is how we got through, and it helps someone else, like, that's amazing.
Turning that purpose or turning that pain into purpose is also very healing. We've talked about that too. Like, giving it a purpose feels productive for us. The next step of that healing process is actually healing for us. So it all kind of really works out, as long as you're doing it for the right reasons, right? Like, you're not just here to, not you, but people in general are doing it for the right reasons. That's a whole nother podcast episode. Anyway, we're not here for clout. We're here to help, for sure. So speaking of that, Laura and I have some things in the works for all of you listeners and people that join the Facebook group, BipolarLines Pod. We're working through some of the details of what the future could look like. So yeah, stay tuned for more news. Can't really talk about it now because all the details are ironed out, right, Laura?
There's such a need, Brooke. I think that's what I see too, is that there's such a need for people, needing support. There's not a lot of education, as we've talked about, for family members or loved ones. And our first piece of advice, you and I both, I've noticed, when anyone comes to us and they're like, what helped you the most? We both say, learning about education. Literally, that helped. It has to be there. If you don't understand what you're dealing with, you're never going to be able to deal with it. And everyone's response is to always, it's that initial go-to, like, I'm just going to love them through it. I'm just going to be here with them no matter what. I'm going to be their ride or die. And you can still be their ride or die, but it looks really different than supporting other illnesses. And if you don't understand that, it's not going to work. You're going to
keep going. Yeah, you're going to flounder. I think what you just said is the reason there's a separation of people who can stay with their bipolar diagnosed person. It's the people who are able to take that knowledge and understanding and process it versus the people who maybe want to love them through it, and maybe the educational part doesn't help. Does that make sense? Like, I could know everything there is to know about social studies. It is not going to help me in my life whatsoever. I hate it. I won't remember it, for one. And it doesn't fuel any part of me. So, like, it's irrelevant. Should it be? No, that's a whole other ballgame. But, like, I'm interested in why people do what they do, why they say what they say, the psychology behind it. I'm interested in all of those things. And it is something that sparks, piques my interest, right? So, like, maybe because there's an element of interest tied to my husband's diagnoses, like, maybe that's why I'm able to process and understand all of these things in the way that I do and separate myself emotionally so I don't feel the full impacts of the destruction and devastation that comes with this illness. I don't know, just spitballing here, but that just kind of hit me.
No, I like it. I don't really know the answer either. I thought it was an interesting comment that he made, and it did get me thinking, like, I do feel, though, that too, like, people consume knowledge differently, and so reading books helped me, but lots of people don't like to read books, and, like, they say they want to consume it through, like, this, like, through a podcast or through a video, or some people want a support group, or some people want, like, maybe we consume it differently. So I guess part of me still thinks that by us doing this, knowledge is the power. Like, that is what will help you get through these episodes with your person. And I also want that for people who have mental illness to have, so many comments on my TikTok will say, my family doesn't understand that it's the illness and it wasn't me.
That's so sad.
It's just heartbreaking because it's not an excuse. It really isn't. It really is the illness. Like, and if you don't understand that, you're going to be like, hey, you're an a-hole. I'm cutting you out. No contact.
I go back to this comment this thought process that I had a while ago, which was like, how would you feel if everyone around you judged you and discarded you when you were having your worst possible day ever? Like, we all have bad days. We all have moments where we don't respond the way we should have, or we could have done better. But like, if our day is thoroughly just effed, frankly, we're not going to be at our best, and we're going to do things we regret, and we're going to do things that we shouldn't be doing. And if that day is the day that the people around us that we love and love us chose to then to say like, oh no, I can't be friends with her, or oh no, she's toxic, or oh no, we need to take our kids away from her, or imagine how that would feel. And that's just one day. Our people, our husbands, these are episodes. They last. It takes time. And I'm just talking about one day. I don't want to be judged and discarded or removed or labeled as toxic or discriminated against because I've had one bad day. I don't know if that helps or hurts, but like for me, that really hit home.
Yeah, I love that point, Brooke. And it made me think of just this idea that when we think of a partnership, your partner, it's supposed to be this like back and forth, like you have a bad day, I got your back, I have a bad day, like this like yin and yang type situation. And people will say in our group or on my TikToks, like, I don't feel emotionally supported. He didn't even care. He didn't even, I told him everything I was feeling and he acted like he didn't even care. You guys, they can't even take care of themselves. They can't even manage. There are going to be times if you are, I think this is an important message to hear. And if you're someone who cannot deal with this, then that's important to know about yourself too, is that there are going to be periods. And like Brooke said, not just one day, there are going to be episodes. That is the disorder. As much as we all wish it would stay in remission forever and go away completely, that's not the reality. It's a chronic condition. So there are going to be situations where you are not emotionally supported by your partner, and they cannot give that to you. And you have to be okay with that, or find alternative means like a therapist or some friend or someone else for that time period, because expecting them to do that is just an unrealistic expectation. I mean, it would be like expecting me to clean the house and have everything ready for a family get together right after I had my C-section. Too bad you had a C-section. Get this whole thing ready. Like you cannot do it. And I think physically it's like people make more allowances, but when it's in your head, when it's mentally, when you can't see it, like you said, Brooke, it'd be so fascinating just to see the brain in those moments. Because we know they happen, we know there's something going on, but we can't see it. And because we can't see it, then our assumption is, well, they're just an a-hole and they don't care about how I feel.
They should just be able to get up and do the things. They should just be able to hear me begging and pleading for help and support and to hold me, to love me, and then just do it. They can't do it. And I think that's a very, very, very important point, Laura. I'm glad you brought it up, because if you are the type of person, and again, no judgment, no shame, you are you. I love you for you, right? Like that's what I tell the kids. I want you to be you. I love you for you. But anyway, if you are the person that needs that constant reassurance, you need that emotional support day in and day out, you want to lean on that person, and like you don't do well without that, this might not be the relationship for you, because you are not going to have that. And there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can say to force it. It just won't happen. So unless you're able to get to the point where like, okay, I know that I can't lean on my person when he's in an episode or she's in an episode, like I'm okay with that. Like I realize I'm going to have to, like Laura said, have other ways for my needs to be met. If that doesn't work, this might not work for you.
Yeah. And, I always get Cody back, and he's the most amazing person and partner that he was, but I have to be willing to accept during those episodes, I don't have that person. In fact, I did this one video that's viral and someone just liked it, and it's been like 3 or 4 years now. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this video. But I said, there's always a point in Cody's psychosis where I say goodbye. And that would make me cry now, but I have to tell him goodbye, because that person is not my person anymore. And I won't see him again until after he gets better. And therefore I can't count on him to be the person I know him to be during those times.
For sure. That's that like ambiguous grief that we made a an episode about for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That, yeah, we say these things because we've lived it. And like you just saw Laura getting vulnerable there, because it's hard. We say these things
Yeah.
as if it's maybe as if it's easy at times. It's not easy. But I think we just have so much passion about the conversation, the topic, and to help people that it can come across as like, oh, and another thing. Okay.
Right. It's so easy. And just do these
totally
steps and you'll be fine.
Like plugging in your phone when it's about to die. Just plug it in. It'll be fine. It'll recharge. Yeah. That's on us, but it's not easy. It's not easy. And it does take a toll on you emotionally. It does take a toll on your physical body. It is hard. And all we want to do is just, I don't know, make it a little bit easier for anybody who is looking for help, right? As the spouse, partner, loved one.
Yeah, because sometimes validation is so helpful. Like, I just put that quote last night in our group by C.S. Lewis that I love. It's like, what, you too? Our friendship was born in that moment when someone says to another, what, you too? I thought I was the only one. I just love that because it's so true.
It really is.
Yeah.
This has been yet another great conversation, and thank you for being vulnerable, for sharing your experiences as always.
Yeah, me too. And I love that someone suggested this topic. So if people have suggestions, please let us know. We don't have like a set list.
We're winging it.
We're just kind of like, what are people talking about and needing today that we're noticing trending on social media?
Love it. Love it. I had a list at one point. I don't know where it went, but whatever. It's fine. But yes. Let's see. So yeah, we've talked about the Facebook group. If you want to join the Facebook group, it's BipolarLines Pod. Yeah, YouTube. Watch us be crazy over here. Watch our faces at BipolarLines Pod again. Same handle, which is nice. And episodes drop every other week on Wednesdays. And thank you all so much for being here, for showing up for your person. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.